I'm not bound to win, but I'm bound to be true. I'm not bound to succeed, but I'm bound to live by the light that I have. I must stand with anybody that stands right and stand with him while he is right and apart with him when he is wrong. A very warm welcome to all of you. I, Vanshika Agrawal, on behalf of Jaipur Institute of Management, welcome you on the virtual platform. Let me introduce our viewers connected with us on various platforms. On the virtual platform, we have with us Mr. Vikrant Vashisht, Senior Lawyer at Supreme Court of India. A very warm welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We have with us Dr. Devendra Narang, Director, Jaipur Institute of Management. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Vanshika.
Dr. Sadanand Prusthi, Dean Academic. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Vanshika.
Dr. Ashwini, Dean Student Welfare. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much.
And Ms. Anandi Sachdeva, Assistant Professor, Jaipur Institute of Management. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, Vanshika.
And I am Vanshika Agrawal, student of Jaipur Institute of Management. A very warm welcome to all my colleagues, the faculty, the intellectual capital of Jaipur of Management and students. Jaipur Institute of Management was set up in the year 2001. The institute is a part of Jaipuria Group of Education Institutions, which has been the forefront when it comes to providing ethically sound and intellectually capable managers to the industry. Jaipur Institute of Management is the leading business school in northern India. The institute has been successfully offering world-class management education for the past several years. The institute was set up in the year 2001. Since its inspection, it has been creating managers of quality who are building our culture of mutual trust. We are NAC A-accredited institute offering Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Technical University's approved full-time 2-year MBA program. I now invite Dr. Devendra Narang for the welcome address. Dr. Narang is the Director, Jaipur Institute of Management, an academician, an avid researcher, and an acclaimed teacher. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, good morning to all of you. A very good morning. I, Professor Dr. Devendra Narang, welcome you all on this virtual platform. We have been very extremely fortunate these days to have such a dignitaries with us who are working relentlessly for the country. We are pleased to have with us Mr. Vikrant Vashisht, a senior lawyer in Supreme Court of India. As we already know that the topic of the day is legal considerations related to corporate governance. So, student, of course, there will be no better individual rather than Mr. Vashisht to give his experiential view on this topic, which we are going to have today. In beginning, let me take you the concept of the law, which we'll discuss. We as an Indian understand the concept as we have it in our roots. Ancient India represented distinctions, traditions of law, and have a historical independent school of legal theory and practice. The main aim of the law is in the Vedic period was to preserve dharma, which means righteousness and the duty. And dharma consists both legal duty and the religious duty, and which we are performing till today. Dear student, you are the upcoming manager of the nations. You will run a company, taking the arms. Your moral value must be strong. You must realize the perfect amalgamations of business and ethics. And business without ethics and ethics without business cannot run. So today we have the example of the companies like Tata that have set an example in the latest context which we are facing in their organizations. They have promised to give the lifelong remuneration to the family of all those who have had an unfortunate demise due to this deadly virus. So this kind of the ethics which we are having set by good organizations. Now the governance, rather a strong governance, is important at every aspect, especially when it comes to a corporate. So we define corporate governance as a set of rules and mechanisms governing the behavior of the firms, which ensure that shareholders, investors, and the creditors are protected from the abuse by the managers and the large stakeholders, and have sufficient incentive to supply the firm with the finance and the credit. So every company which is limited in nature has to comply with these rules for credible, efficient, and legal working of the company. As budding manager, I'm sure you are going to learn lot from the session. Take this learning along with you, and when you go from the institute and preserve them lifelong, use them whenever you are in tussles in your corporate life. Not only you, our faculty, including me, are looking forward to learn a lot from our dignitary on this virtual diet today. As I have told you before, there is no one more suitable to talk in this topic discussions which we are having today. With this, I am very pleased to invite Mr. Vishis to give us a deep understanding about the complex corporate world and the legal considerations related to it. So thank you very much for being with us once again and looking forward to a great session and full of learnings and and knowledge. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Corporate governance is concerned with holding the balance between economic and social goals and between individual and communal goals. The governance framework is there to encourage the efficient use of resources and equality to require accountability for the stewardship of those resources. The aim is to align as nearly as possible the interest of individuals, corporations, and society. Ladies and gentlemen, with this, let me welcome Mr. Vikrant Vashisht, Senior Lawyer, Supreme Court of India. He has done MA History from Delhi University and LLB also from Delhi University. He is the member bar, Supreme Court of India, and joined the bar in May 1996 and is in active legal practice ever since. He is handling a wide range of civil and criminal matters pertaining to the Honorable Supreme Court of India, original and appellate jurisdiction of the Honorable High Court of Delhi, and litigations pertaining to District Court, Debt Recovery Tribunal, Central Administrative Tribunal, Supreme Consumer Court, Rent Tribunal, and etc. He is an alumnus of Jaipuria School, Kanpur. We are really pleased to have you with us, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be associated with the Jaipuria name itself, because whatever I am today, I owe a lot to Jaipuria Kanpur for making me what I am. In fact, law as a discipline, if you ask me, is a very, very vast discipline. It's a huge subject. It's a very vast discipline. So as far as corporate compliance is concerned, we will try to discuss and pick up issues one by one, which are important for corporate governance and corporate compliance. Actually, law as we understand it today and the way it is being practiced and applied in India is more of a British concept. We are in fact following the Queen's law, whether it is the Indian Penal Code, the Indian Evidence Act, the Criminal Procedure Code, the Civil Procedure Code, which we are following today, are in fact given to us more by the Britishers who ruled us for almost 300 years. In fact, if we go to, as learned Professor Narang, he mentioned that if we go to our ancient tradition, the concept actually is dharma. And if you actually look at it, there is no synonym for dharma in the English language. Best translated, dharma would actually mean a universal order of righteousness. That is doing right, which is universally acceptable. In fact, we are all well versed with the concept of Ashoka's dharma, where dharma would, or universal righteousness would be let's say giving adequate respect to elders, proper treatment of youngers, establishing an order of universal tolerance and acceptance. So this is in short dharma. And law as it is in our ancient tradition is called vidhi. VIDHI, vidhi. Hindi mein usko vidhi bolte hain. Vidhi is basically a mechanism to uphold and establish dharma. And whereas the Western notion of law is concerned, what we are following practically in India today is slightly different. And as I said earlier, there is no substitute word in the English language for the word dharma. Well, anyway, now let's come to the topic regarding corporate importance of law in corporate governance. Actually, there are numerous laws in operation in India, and all the industries, as a matter of fact, would have to deal with different laws according to their own requirement, depending upon manufacturing sector, the financial sector, whatever corporate sector that is operating would have to deal with different laws. In fact, the first concept which I would like to touch is the concept of corporate compliance. In fact, corporate compliance is a very big field which all corporate entities today have to actually follow and comply with. And the compliances are industry specific, and in fact are to be carried out and on the needs and requirements of each industry. In fact, if you look at it, the financial part of corporate compliance is generally handled by the chartered accountants, and the legal part of corporate compliance is to be normally handled by the company secretaries, because normally all corporate entities they have with them associated certain chartered accountants and company secretaries who take care of the financial and the legal compliance part. Now, coming to the specifically to the part of legal compliance, now legal compliance is to be taken care of by the company secretaries who are normally associated with the corporate entity. Now, what could be the areas of where legal compliance has to be carried out? All industries, I'm just sharing a few examples in terms of the acts which might be applicable for legal compliance. For example, you might have to follow the provisions of the Minimum Wages Act, the Gratuity Act, the Workmen's Compensation Act, the Shops and Establishment Act, the various pollution control laws that are there operational in the country. Then you might have to again comply with certain rules, regulations and laws that are pertaining to employee safety. And there are actually, in this short span of time where I am trying to share certain thoughts and ideas with you, it would be very, very difficult and impractical to enumerate and illustrate all the laws that are actually operating in India, because laws are innumerable. So I have just given a few examples which a corporate entity might have to comply with in its day-to-day operations. Now, as all of you are, future corporate managers and corporate honchos who would be, running big businesses tomorrow, we must remember one thing in particular, that the legal department of a corporate entity is actually always a expenditure head, and it definitely, and legal compliances, dealing with litigation, it involves a lot of expenditure. The legal department actually is never a source of revenue to a corporate until and unless there are certain recoveries which have to be made from certain clients or certain entities. And in only those circumstances, the legal department comes into, it plays its role for generating revenue for the company or the organization. So you must always keep in mind that the legal department of any company is always an expenditure head, but it is a necessary expenditure head which has to be maintained under any circumstances. Because if an organization or a corporate entity is not complying with the laws that are in force in the country or the legal compliances which are required to be met are not being met, then the corporate entity and the directors, the managers, who can run into lot of legal complications. So maintaining a full-fledged legal department and an effective legal department is very, very important for every organization. And one very, very practical and sane advice that I would like to share with all the participants, that whatever steps you take in the day-to-day governance and the running of the organization should never be taken on any advice which is contrary to the one given by the legal department. Now, I can give you two very small examples, and let me share something with you. In fact, all corporate entities, they have in-house legal teams and as well as certain legal employees who are law graduates. But you must remember one thing: there is a lot of difference between corporate legal managers and actual practicing lawyers. So whenever a legal complication arises which might have long-term ramifications and repercussions, you should always seek the advice of a practicing lawyer. Although the advice of the in-house legal counsel is very important, I can share two examples with you. In fact, I have been legal advisor to the legal head of DLF Limited I had a corporate stint for a year. So I had practiced for 15 odd years before I had joined DLF. So one example is that I'm sharing with you is that there was a lease agreement which had been executed with a certain entity by DLF, and the total period of the lease was 36 months. And in these lease agreement, there was a lock-in period clause for 18 months. And lock-in period is that within the specified period, no party is allowed to terminate the agreement. So, contrary to the advice given by me and the legal department, the company, it terminated the lease before the expiry of the lock-in period. And as a result, the other party, the lessee, they could approach a concerned court of law and obtain a stay. So in short, what I want to tell you is that whatever steps a corporate entity in the day-to-day governance should take should normally not be taken contrary to the advice of the legal department. And in the day-to-day governance of your company or firm, corporate entity, whatever, if some certain specific legal issues and problems arise, you should always go to a domain expert. If it is something pertaining to patents, copyrights, trademarks, you should preferably go to a lawyer who has rich experience in this and various other fields. And whenever a legal problem arises, in fact, there should be a discussion, in-house discussion amongst the top management of the organization. And then after due deliberations with the legal department, a proper decision should be taken. And in fact, nowadays, the general trend of the courts, of the government, is in fact more towards dispute resolution, alternative dispute resolution, and more towards affecting compromises between the parties, so that litigation under any circumstances can be avoided and litigation can be brought to the minimum. So my practical advice to all budding managers and all corporate entities always is that in case there is a dispute of the corporate entity with another corporate entity or individual, all efforts should be made to sit across the table, negotiate with the other party, and arrive at a amicable settlement or compromise. And in fact, no stone unturned should be left to arrive at a compromise or a amicable settlement. And litigation should only be used as a last resort, because litigation actually is a long drawn and a never ending process in the present legal scenario that what is prevailing in the country. Because actually, as we all know, the courts have a 4-tier hierarchy. So even if you, let's say, win or lose a case at the first level, that is at the level of the civil judge or at the level of the magistrate, there are 3 more tiers. There are 3 more levels at which the other party or you can approach. So normally in legal terms, what we say is that litigation only comes to an end. It does not come to an end till the time each of the parties, either of the party has approached the apex court, that is the Supreme Court of India. Only once either of the party has approached the Supreme Court, it is only then that the litigation, the list, it comes to its logical culmination or conclusion. And in fact, what should be inculcated and encouraged is that all the management and the managers should be provided in-house training, and they should be kept on being updated regarding all the legal issues and the laws that pertain to their particular industry, and training programs of all the top management should continue in this regard, so that all the managers of a corporate entity are well versed with the laws which are concerned with their company or their corporate entity. Now there is one thing which is actually very important. Now, for example, if a particular corporate, because earlier I had mentioned that litigation should be used as a last resort, but you know, there are certain exceptions which at times we have to follow. Now, for example, due to some reason, if a company, let's say a court imposes a fine or some kind of a financial implication on a company or a corporate entity, and that fine or financial implication has long-term ramifications. By long-term ramifications, I mean that in case that particular fine can, for example, invite a floodgate of litigation against the corporate entity. So in that case, we should try to challenge that particular issue or that decision up to the last stage, because sometimes it so happens that even if a small fine is imposed on a company, and then you are flooded with litigations on that particular issue in any consumer forum or in any court, so that would ultimately not be very healthy for the long-term running of the organization. And one thing I would like to share with the corporate managers today is that there are certain areas of law which you should be very well versed with. For example, one is the Negotiable Instruments Act, that is the check bouncing of checks and recovery of money from other entities, other organizations. Because if you practically look at it, there is something which is in law called limitation. Limitation basically means the time period which is normally there in law for filing a particular litigation or case against a particular entity. Now let's take an example. For example, let's say if you have to, if a certain corporate entity, let's say X, owes your company certain money. So in order to recover that particular money, the time frame that is laid down in law is 3 years. And this 3 years in legal terms, we call it limitation. So be very sure that if you have to recover money from a particular corporate entity or some of your business associates, be sure that the suit for recovery or the litigation for the recovery of the money is filed within a time span of 3 years. Now, here again, there is a catch, because normally all the banks and the financial institutions, what they do, that if there is a specific acknowledgement by the other party that it owes you a particular debt, then the limitation period can be extended by further 3 years. And as far as, because recovery of money and check bouncing cases, these are in fact the most abundant litigations that are normally which take place as far as companies and corporate entities are concerned. Now, let me share certain basics about check bouncing. Remember one thing, that whenever a check bounces and we have a check return memo from a bank, a notice should be sent within 30 days of the bouncing of the check. Whenever a check bounces, you should send a notice within 30 days. It is very, very important. And the next step is that on the receipt of the notice, the other party which owes you money, if within 15 days he returns the money back to you, which he owes to you on account of the bouncing of the check, then you don't have to file a case. But after the expiry of the 15 days from the receipt of notice, it is imperative for you to file a case within 30 days. Otherwise, your cause of action is lost. So, as far as recovery of money is concerned and bouncing of checks is concerned, we have to be very, very particular on these aspects. And the other part is, as a company, as a legal entity, as a corporate entity, you should be very, very particular about maintaining your records. In particular, if we have some kind of joint ventures, collaborations, agreements with other parties, normally 2 or 3 original copies should be made, and an original copy should be available with each party. Because normally in law, when we go for litigation, it is the original copy which has to be produced in court. So always be sure that whenever you enter into a contract, a joint venture, a collaboration, or any kind of agreement with another party, always you should make copies in duplicate, triplicate, or 4 copies, 5 copies in original. And a spare copy in original should always be maintained with one of the parties. And one more important thing nowadays is that the IT Act has come into operation in 2000. The Indian Information Technology Act is concerned, has come into operation. And all computer generated copies are deemed to be original in a court of law. So what we should actually do, we should always maintain our computers and our systems in proper order, so that whenever we have to go for a litigation or any legal proceedings against any party, our invoices, our documents can be generated properly from the concerned computer. And as a corporate entity or as a company, you should be very, very particular about maintaining the ethics of doing business. Because doing business ethically is very, very important. And in fact, all corporate entities should be members of any federation, confederation, or any association which normally takes care of the interest of their particular business. Because sometimes it so happens that we have to jointly raise voices on certain issues. So being a member of an association, a confederation, is always an advantage. Because sometimes it so happens that if we are a member of a confederation or an association, then sometimes class action suits have to be filed. So normally when we go as a group before a concerned court of law, the impact of it is much more as compared to that of an individual litigant. In fact, one very important thing which I would like to share with you here is that there is a dictum in law which says that mistake of law can be an excuse, but ignorance of law is never an excuse. So in the running of your day-to-day business, be very, very particular and very, very sure, and always keep your legal department in confidence and always go by their advice and concurrence, because there should be no violation in law of any law in any manner whatsoever. Otherwise, it can have very, very serious ramifications and repercussions for the company, the directors, the partners, etc. So always bear in mind that mistake of law can be an excuse, but ignorance of law can never be an excuse. Other very important aspect which I would like to highlight here is that whenever an employee is hired by an organization, always carry out a background screening and ensure that the person you are hiring with whatever checking mechanism you have, whether through a psychometric analysis or so to say interview, you must ensure that the person you are hiring has never been involved in any criminal activity and is a person who upholds high moral values. And in fact, to check the antecedents, whether the person is involved in any criminal activity or not, there is an entity called the National Crime Records Bureau. So you can always go on their website and check. And the other mechanism is to go and verify the background of the concerned person from the local police station where he is residing, or the local police station which is the nearest to his place of residence. And please remember one very, very vital and very, very important thing, that law does not give you a second chance. What I mean by this is that law does not give you a second chance. For example, whenever you approach a court of law for any kind of litigation or legal proceedings concerning your company pertaining to your organization, brief your lawyer completely and always put the full facts before the concerned court of law. Because whatever plea we have to take in a court of law, the complete plea has to be taken at the first instance. Because normally at the first appellate stage, that is in the second court of law, which is one step further, in case a certain things have been left out, then we will not get a chance to agitate those issues or those particular aspects again. So always be very, very particular and ensure that whenever a company or a corporate entity is going for litigation, you should apprise the complete and full facts of your concerned case to your legal team or your lawyers, whoever are basically dealing with your company's legal matters and litigation. Okay, one issue which is nowadays is very, very important, and in fact, not important, but extremely important, is gender sensitization. In fact, in our workplace, we should ensure an environment where which is absolutely free from discrimination of all kinds. And in fact, you must be aware, nowadays there is a law in place pertaining to sexual harassment of women at workplaces. And this law requires that an internal complaints committee should be constituted. So all companies and all entities should strictly comply and follow this law. And as per in fact, there is a Supreme Court judgment by the name of Vishakha. It is called the Vishakha case, where certain guidelines have been laid down pertaining to the maintaining and operation of this committee, this internal complaints committee under the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplaces Act. So all corporate entities should be very, very sensitive to this particular issue, and all legal compliances pertaining to this act should be very much in place. And another aspect is that whenever you go for litigation, please ensure that your documentation is complete and you should have a common consensus amongst your in-house team before you brief a lawyer or your legal team. Well, this is what I felt briefly I could share with you. If any of you have any queries or any specific questions, I am available to answer.
Thank you so much, sir. It was a session full of valuable insights for all of us. So my colleagues have certain questions that are put up in the chat box, requesting you to answer the questions.
Please, can I know the question, please?
Yes, sir. So one of our students, Yashita Khandelwal, wants to ask, according to you, what are the most critical ethical issues in business today?
Pardon, I couldn't get it.
Yeah. According to you, what are the most critical ethical issues in business today?
See, actually, I am primarily a lawyer. So ethical issues in business, I would not be the right person to comment on it. The only thing primarily what we have to do is that we should conduct our business ethically according to age-old moral values and ensure that no kind of discrimination on the basis of caste, creed, sex, color, religion should exist at our workplace. Because I am primarily not concerned with day-to-day running of businesses. So as far as the ethical issues concerned when the running of businesses are concerned, I would not be the right person to comment upon it appropriately.
Okay, sir. Sir, our next question is from Asmita. Sir, she wants to know that what are the ways in which the effectiveness of corporate governance can be measured?
Can you please come once again?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What are the ways in which effectiveness of corporate governance can be measured?
See, corporate governance again, I can only talk about the legal aspects. If you have certain, some specific legal query, I can, answer that. As far as corporate governance is concerned, that is, primarily not my area of specialization. I would not be competent to comment on this particular issue. If you have any specific question on any legal issue, and which that falls within, my domain of specialization, I am available to, answer on that.
Sanandi,
Yes, sir.
will you read, some questions which are
Yes,
pertaining
sir.
to the,
I'm just doing that. Yes, sir.
okay.
Sir, so this is like quite pertaining. I won't say fully pertaining, but sir, Komal Sachan from the patch wants to ask, what do you have to say about the failure of Indian governance to catch hold of fugitive debtors like Mehul Choksi and Vijay Mallya?
Ma'am, actually, see, this is pertaining, primarily to the extradition laws. And
Okay.
extradition laws are, this is a very, very specific subject. It's a very, very specific subject. And in fact, it is, if you ask me, it is a general failure of our legal system, because our general criminal laws are very, very lax. And actually, normally people who escape the process of law and they migrate to other countries, it is an area which falls within the paradigm of extradition proceedings. And extradition is, again, as I mentioned earlier, it is a very, very specific law, and it primarily depends upon what kind of extradition treaties we have with other nations, and what particular laws those countries have in place to people who have come to those particular countries, vis-a-vis whether they have come by way of seeking asylum or whether they have come as fugitives. So this is actually not, I would not be too much within my area of expertise to answer that.
Okay, sir. Another question,
to
sir.
add into it, just a
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
query to add into it. So, do you see that what is the effect of these corporate governance on banks' performance? Is it positive, negative, or none, according to you? Like if we are talking about these cases, as Nandi ma'am has said. So, how you
Sir,
see the
actually,
effect of this corporate governance on bank performances?
Sir, actually, if you practically ask me, the failure of the, what about there's so much in the news that the failure of the financial institutions, the banking institutions. In fact, it is not more of a question of legal compliance. It is more of an issue of political interference.
Okay.
Because actually, I have been a lawyer for banks also. I have been on the panel of Oriental Bank of Commerce and State Bank of India around, that was around 10 years back. Whenever normally a loan is given by a financial institution, there is something which is by way of a security which we call a collateral in legal terms.
Okay.
Now, for example, I let me put it that way. If I, let's say, give a loan of 100 crores, the norm is that I should be keeping a security of a value of 200 crores to further a loan of 100 rupees to any particular business entity or individual.
Okay.
But now, normally what happens, majority of our banks are under the public sector domain, and which are in turn directly, indirectly functioning under the Ministry of Finance. So whenever political interference comes, the norms of lending are, normally relaxed or compromised with. And as a result of what you are seeing today, these bad debts and loans, which are so much a part of the news, actually occur.
Right. So what's your view on this?
If strict compliance is done,
Yeah.
pertaining to the lending rules and norms, then normally these things normally should not happen. Because normally what happens, the moment a person or an entity or a corporate entity or a company, it defaults as far as paying of loans is concerned, the immediate step of a financial institution is to liquidate the assets, whatever are within their, whether by way of an equitable mortgage or by in whatever form they are available with them, and take the money. But whenever there is a political interference, bureaucratic interference, then normally what happens, that the assets that are held by the financial institution are very much less in value as compared to the loan which has been forwarded to the end.
Okay.
Ma'am,
Sir,
there's one more query. So
Okay.
what's your view on formation of this new regulator for the non-performing assets of the banks? Like by the
Sir.
name of the bad banks they are coming.
Sir, can you please be a bit louder, sir?
Sir, I just want to know your view on the formation of new regulator on non-performing assets. Like they have coined it as bad bank, and transferring the non-performing assets to that bank for regulating those non-performing assets into the banking sector.
In fact, as you might be knowing, the latest is that there is a IBC, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code that is in place.
Right.
Earlier, we used to have it, what was called as the BIFR, the Board of Industrial Finance and Reconstruction.
Okay.
So things are changing, and as per this Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, nowadays the lending norms are also getting stricter, and the moment there is a default, then whatever legal processes have to be initiated are done.
Okay. So do you think that we need to revisit the purpose of corporate governance for banks?
Sir, actually, this would be, because actually this would be, too specialized a question, would be too specialized a question for me to answer, because actually I am not too much of a finance expert. Basically,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Right, sir. Right, sir.
Sir, another question is that you have given a very important advice to the budding HR managers to check the criminal record of the person in concern whom they are going
Correct.
to hire.
Correct.
So, sir,
Correct.
other than visiting the website you told as National Crime Record and checking the background with the local police station, any other measure would you like the budding HR managers to take on this?
Ma'am, because see, whatever information is available about a person, it is available in public domain, and these are the only two mechanisms by which you can check. Either it is the National Crime Records Bureau or the local police station, or the other way would be to go to the concerned court where within which particular jurisdiction the residence of the person lies. But that would be too complicated and cumbersome a process.
Right.
For any person to do. So the best way to do is to check with the local police station and the National Crime Records Bureau.
All right. Okay. Sir, though you've thrown an appropriate light upon that we are following the Queen's law in India, and you've explained the concept of dharma, where student Aditya Rai wants to know that can the Hindu concept of dharma be equated to legal justice in Indian context?
Ma'am, actually, dharma is all pervading. Dharma is the concept which is universal, which is as per our shastras, which is even beyond time and space.
Yes.
And legal justice is a very, very specific subset, which has very, very limited ramifications. So
Absolutely. Okay, all right. I got that, sir. So I think Aditya must have been clear with this query. Another question, sir, Abhishek Malik wants to ask that what is the importance of memorandum of association and articles of association, AOA and MOA?
Ma'am, memorandum of association is normally the so-called preamble of a company. As we have the preamble of the constitution, it's a preamble of the company in which particular specific areas the company is dealing with. those are the memorandum and articles of association.
Absolutely. Okay, Abhishek, I hope you're clear with the query. Sir, this is another question that we'll be taking at last. So it suggests that the latest tiff between the Indian government and social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, etc., gives government a lot of power over their regulation in dealing with the content in India. So what are
Correct.
your expert views on that?
Ma'am, actually, I'll tell you, this is a very, very tricky issue. You know, this is a never-ending debate which has been time and again, it has cropped up in the Supreme Court. It is, basically individual liberty vis-a-vis national unity and integrity. So, ultimately, some kind of a fine balance has to be struck between the two. The social media platforms, they cannot be at liberty in the name of freedom of expression. Anything and everything cannot be allowed to be published on or to come within the public domain on social media platforms. Some kind of a fine balance has to be maintained so that the unity and the integrity of the nation is also maintained, and as well as individual freedom of the citizens or the individuals too is maintained.
Absolutely. So the other day we were also having a debate in our class on this, that Article 19A, and under it one clause, it suggests that we do have the right to give expression freely, but we don't have the right to misinform. So these days a lot of social media websites are misinforming the people. So I think because of this, there has to be a fine balance in that.
Ma'am, actually, unfortunately, this is not something legal what I'm talking about. As citizens, all of us, but it is high time we start talking about our duties also.
Absolutely.
We as citizens not only have rights, first and foremost, it is very important for us to perform our duties and then talk and agitate about our rights. Because it is something like this, when this very famous quote, which we all of us heard: ask not what your country can do, ask what you can do for your country.
For your country.
So, as we as informed individuals, educated individuals, should understand that we have a lot of duties towards our nation also. And once we perform our duties to the best of our ability, it is only then a right comes into play.
Absolutely. That's a wonderful insight, sir. The budding managers definitely require to ponder upon this very important fact being given by you, that we need to perform our duties first and then ask for the rights. Okay. So with this, sir, we are done with the question and answers, because we were pertaining to the legal questions rather than the corporate governance questions. So the students have put a bit more towards the corporate governance side. So with this, we'll end our questions. Thank you so much, sir, for the insightful answers being given to the students. Vanshika?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
any other point, Mr. Vashist, you would like to raise related to your this legal aspect?
Sir, in fact, two issues what I've raised is that number one is, because as far as corporate entities, you should maintain your documentation should be very strong. You should, all your contracts, joint ventures, collaborations, agreements, you should have proper copies maintained with you. Your systems should be in complete working order. And you should be very particular, as I have told you earlier, because most of the litigations which corporate entities enter into are 80% of them, what I have practical experience in my legal career, is pertaining to recovery of money. So this aspect of limitation and whatever I briefly talked about, that bouncing of check part, these should always be kept in mind. Otherwise, sir, there are a lot of permutations and combinations in law, which are in fact, endless, and that would require very long deliberations, sitting across the table and talking about this.
Yes, yes. Okay, thank you.
Any other specific questions, sir? If I don't know, to the best of my ability, if I can answer whatever.
Yes, thank you so much, sir. I would like to pay a sincere thanks on the behalf of Jaipur Institute of Management to Mr. Vikrant Vashisht for sparing his valuable time and sparing with us and giving all the valuable inputs. The concept of dharma, which is doing the right, which is universally right. We also got to know the concept of vidhi, a mechanism of upholding dharma. He told us the legal compliance is to be taken care by company secretary and are carried out by various laws such as Compensation Act, Gratuity Act, rules pertaining to wages of employees. The input given to our participants that the legal department of a corporate entity involves a great expenditure and hence should be taken care of was a very useful insight for all of us, sir. Thank you, sir, for getting us to know the difference between corporate in-house legal department and practicing lawyers told by you with a great example, which would help us in a future corporate career for sure. Your advice on the dispute in corporate to be settled and litigation should be kept as the last option and quoting extremely great examples and strengthening our certain basic concepts. Sir, hope you will guiding us in the future endeavors too. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.